You effing Christians are always pushing.
Wait a minute, whoa. I'm believing a lie right now, which is I'm not good enough. Can you tell me something that I can just do right now? Because you don't naturally learn how to handle conflict. Our environment is conflict.
Yeah.
And we've got to handle it well, teach people how to handle it.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to P Cube. Glad you're here today. I've got a great guest. Chris Darley is going to be with me, and we'll bring him in here in just a second. But I want to talk a little bit about today's topic. It's conflict resolution. How do you handle conflicts? We all have them. I still do. I did all throughout my career. I was good sometimes at resolving the conflict and other times really bad. And it was interesting the wake that I saw in the collateral damage, if you will, if the conflict wasn't resolved well, or actually if I avoided it, that was not good as well. But if you invested time in conflict resolution, it made a big difference. As a matter of fact, the relationships where we had conflict and we resolved it grew. And we'll talk a little bit about that today. My hope is that we'll be able to share some principles with you about how to think about conflict, not to avoid it, and how to walk through and build your relationships at work. So we'll go there. But before I bring Chris in and have him introduce himself, I want to share a quick story with you. I was in Moscow, as they say, Russia, not Moscow, Tennessee, or Georgia, or anything like that. I was actually in Moscow. I was part of the Coca-Cola company while I was working there. And in 2019, they asked me to come in and facilitate a partnership for growth workshop. It was this idea where you bring two parties together that either have had change in leadership, they want to go from good to great, or if they have conflict. And this situation wasn't necessarily conflict, but it's interesting what happened during that. We went through the first day of the workshop, and then we all go to dinner. And there are not only Russians, but there are other nationalities involved in it, because you have Hellenic bottling company for Coca-Cola there, as well as representatives of the Coca-Cola company. But we went to dinner, and these dinners, wine, drinks were flowing freely. And we started having conversations, and the Russians there asked me if they could ask a question. And I said, well, sure, I'll entertain anything. And they asked me who I voted for in the 2016 election. I thought, oh, okay, here we go. So I told them who, I told them why, and then they were a little bit set back on it. And so we had a conversation around that. I think that might have set the stage. And I was being a diplomat the way I approached it. But the next question I had for them was, what did they think about Ronald Reagan? And they just said that he was a nice man who loved his wife. And I thought, wow, there's a childhood hero of mine that I grew up with and really look up to. And that was the respect, or I guess really lack of understanding of what he did. And I said, well, what did you think about Gorbachev? And they said that he betrayed us. And that was their thoughts, because those people that were in that room grew up after the Soviet Union fell, and they stood in bread lines. They were hungry. They went without. And so they had a totally different perspective on that. Well, it was an interesting conversation. There was some tension around all that, and I didn't mean for there to be at all. But then as I stood up, I made a toast, and I wished them all well. I told them hopefully we could do things great together as we go through the rest of the workshop. And as I sat down, there's an expat that stands up in the room, a lady, and she's been working in Moscow. And she goes, "You're such an effing American." And I paused, and she said that out loud in front of everybody else, and everybody else starts laughing, and I didn't know how to take it, right? And she sat back down. The funny thing is, she's American too, and she had gone what I call native on that. Well, to make a long story short, the next day after that, I was concerned about how the workshop might go the next day. I actually had one of the Russian counterparts, people come in and talk to me and say, Preston, last night we are not like that. We are much more diplomatic. We apologize. We want to make sure that we haven't upset you. And here was the net on it. I wasn't offended by it. It was a very interesting, unique situation for me about conflict and how to handle that. But I told him, I said, look, if we can't have conversations about different points of view and still be okay and be friends together, then something's wrong. And so he agreed with that, and we moved on. But conflict resolution in that moment, the choice to not respond, to be empathetic, to listen, to appreciate, understanding the environment, and I really anticipating what it might say next was really, really important. So I want to share that story with y'all. It was a lot of lessons I had. And Chris and I, when I bring him in here, we're going to share some other stories, one that we have in common that we'd experienced together, we learned some things from, right, as we went through that. But I want to introduce my guest, Chris Darley. Chris is a good friend of mine. We met a few years ago, and we'll talk about how we met in just a minute. Chris is an owner-operator of Chick-fil-A, a restaurant here in Atlanta. And man, you're a leadership guru, you're a coach, you're a think tank, a thought leader. So appreciate you being on here. And you know what? Probably one of the funniest people I know. And I got to divulge two other quick things. He sits on my personal advisory board. If you don't know about that, send me a note and I'll share with you a little bit about what that means. And so I lean into you for advice once a month, and we talk about what's going on. And then also I had the wonderful privilege of speaking at Chick-fil-A during one of the devotions. And guess who I asked to introduce me? It was Chris. And he said I was a smart person up there, but I highly doubt it. I think that's the one thing you got wrong about all that. So,
Lying's
good.
Not too bad.
Well, it was okay. It was a little white lie. It set me up well in front of the entire group. So thank you for that. But Chris, great to have you on today. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, introduce yourself, and then we'll jump into a little bit about how we met and something we encountered together.
Absolutely. Well, the short version, I can do the long version. I'll give you the short version. Grew up in Atlanta. I'm one of the few people that actually is from Atlanta. Started working at Chick-fil-A 31 years ago. First job. Wow. And what was a fast food job. About a year into it, someone said, "Are you going to work at Chick-fil-A for the rest of your life?" And literally, I remember being 17 going, I don't know. I just might, because I saw my operator do this idea of ministry and business, serving and entrepreneurship. I didn't know you could do both. I honestly thought you had to choose. So I went to school with the intention of being a Chick-fil-A operator. One of those, went to Clemson, got an economics degree, graduated, and Chick-fil-A was just dumb enough to say yes to a 22-year-old kid. And some days I look back on, I don't know what they were thinking, but I'm very glad that they took a chance on a guy that was honestly really passionate about developing people, really passionate about making a difference, and just full of energy to do whatever. Landed in Greensboro, North Carolina. Let me just sum up Greensboro for you. What I did in sales last month at my restaurant here in Marietta, I did for that entire year.
Oh, wow.
So my 1994 Honda Accord, I schlepped a lot of chicken and coolers to hospitals and businesses. I mean, whatever it took to build a business, we did it.
Yeah.
So did that for about 2 years, and then had the chance to be on the pioneering front with Chick-fil-A to go to California. So opened one of the very first freestanding restaurants in California. People didn't know it, Chick-a-Flick, Chick-fil-A. I mean, every single day we were introducing people to the brand, and it was really cool, really exciting. A great time. We were there for 3 years. We loved it. It was one of those things that we wanted to live indoors, though. My wife and I, Martha, we'd been married we got married in 2001. We'd been married a few years, and our boys were born. So we had twins that were born in California. And I don't know if you know it or not, but it was expensive in 2008 to live in California. Right?
Oh, yeah.
If you remember anything about the economy, this was literally the year before the crash.
Yep.
And we sold our house 1 month before the market crashed. Moved back to Georgia. Continued my Chick-fil-A career. Been in Marietta now for, 17 years.
Wow, okay.
And then I took over the Chick-fil-A inside of Mercedes-Benz Stadium about 2.5 years ago.
That's not a big deal, is it?
You know, it's like a wild ride. I tell people it's like planning a funeral, a wedding, and a birthday every single event. It's huge.
Yeah.
We clean up and then we go home. Got a great team. Yeah. We've learned a lot in 2.5 years there. So
fantastic. And so tell us a little bit about, I know that you root for a certain team.
I do. I am a Clemson Tiger. I tell people, "Are you a Clemson fan?" I'm like, "No, I went there and got a degree."
Oh, nice.
And the beauty is, it's really my wife, Martha. So we've been married now 24 years.
Yeah.
And she's a Tiger. So she buys me all this stuff. I mean, like, this was my Christmas present. I mean,
nice.
It was, it's Orange Band. And
that's great.
That's how we roll. My daughter, I forgot to mention my amazing daughter.
Yes.
So Anna Claire is 16 now. She's a junior in high school. And it's so funny. I've raised them to not like other schools unintentionally, right? They're just like, "Oh, I'll never go to that school." And I'm like, "Why?" I'm like, literally because of Clemson allegiance. So I am definitely a Tiger. I'm watching Clemson if we're playing intramural ping pong.
I love it.
You know, like, I'm intense. I mean, if it's badminton, I'm like, I got my shirt on. I got a band. It's intense.
Yeah, I want you to know, Chris came in this morning beaming because of 2 basketball games that have happened here recently, right? So they just beat North Carolina and they beat Duke.
I mean,
I don't
know
big
the last
in the ACC.
time. We were talking about when's the last time that happened.
Yeah.
The buddies of mine. And we literally couldn't find any data on that, so I'm gonna figure that out.
Really good, awesome. Yeah. Well, let's fast forward to 2023.
Yes.
You and I are both have gone on a trip with Passion City Church to go to the Holy Land, to go to Israel, right? Correct. One of the bucket list items that Carl and I had. I know it was for you all as well. But tell me a little bit about your perspective about how we met, and then we'll talk about the dinner conversation we had in just a second.
Yeah, that's good. So we go to a different church. And so we're in there. There's definitely a group of people, a group of friends that are the Passion City group. And it was awesome that we really got brought into a fold and got to be friends with some incredible couples and just made some incredible friends and some incredible stories of people losing luggage and just an incredible time on Bus 16. And really how we met, it was like, who is this guy, Preston? Right? And I say that because very quickly, there's 3 C's. All right, here are my 3 C's.
Okay.
It's Clemson, church, and Chick-fil-A. Between those 3, I can meet just about anybody.
Right.
And immediately, we found out that we had a connection to a friend. And, oh, well, you worked with for a long time. And so then we hit it off and just started having stories and talking about life, liberty, and the pursuit.
Yeah.
And my first impression with you was this guy's got it all together. Yeah,
no.
But that was my first impression.
Well, I appreciate the first impression, but that's not the case.
And I mean, you're
See, we're having conflict right now, as a matter of fact. Right. How do we resolve this?
I'm not being a liar this time.
Oh,
I'm not lying this time. No, but seriously, my first thought was, man, this guy's really sharp.
Yeah,
and
thank you.
Just from an experience of, you can smell fake people, you know, like you walk in.
What do they smell like?
They smell. It's a lot like. Well, I was going to name another
That's
team.
Okay. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I shouldn't do that.
Ooh.
Exactly. That might make your ratings go down really
or
quickly.
up. You never know.
Up. But, you know, you really go, wait a minute. This is authentic. And so that's what I would say, that I really enjoyed the fact that you were truly authentic with Carla and just how y'all as a couple were, the questions that you asked, the conversations that we had.
Yeah.
Well,
so thank you. I recall us meeting, and I guess I would consider, if you're a comedy duo, there's a straight guy and there's the one that's the funny one, right? And I know you're an extremely serious individual, but you've got a tremendous sense of humor, and that's where we first connected and talked about. And I just laughed, man. I remember your playfulness, the fun, how you brought energy every day on that. So it's just a brilliant and great connection. So divine, I think, friendship as we met on that. So a lot of fun. So we're in the Holy Land, right? And so Passion does a great job. We're on Bus 16. So if that gives you any hint about how many people were there, us and 1,000 of our best friends. Wild, absolutely wild. But they do a great job in terms of the logistics, moving things. It's like Chick-fil-A, wonderful job of logistics. But we go to this dinner, and we're on this bus going up a hill. And I remember them telling us the restaurant was near where the Ark of the Covenant used to be kept. Do you remember them saying that to us? Yeah. Incredible venue and place to be.
I'm pretty sure we were about to go to heaven.
We were close.
We were really close.
Right?
I mean, there was no one else around. That was a wild bus ride.
Yeah, and before the bus ride, I got this text from the group leader, who's their bus leader and everything else, Dave. And Dave sends me this note and says, "Hey, Preston, I know your background, leadership, blah, blah, blah. Would you help facilitate a discussion at dinner?" And I said, "Oh, piece of cake. Sure. That's great." And I was like, "Would you just talk about some of your takeaways from the week, the ahas, what's changed you and all that?" And I said, "Okay, that's great." So I'm sitting there with Carla. Chris and Martha are at the table as well. There's probably, I'd say, about 10 people there at the table.
Yeah.
And we go around. I think it was the women that went first. Isn't that funny how a lot of these conversations, women are more transparent, vulnerable. They're willing to share a takeaway. And so a couple of them kick it off. And I think I'd called on another guy that hadn't said anything yet and encouraged him to speak up. Do you remember that? You spoke into it, right, and talked about your piece. But then it came to this guy that was sitting right across from me. Right across from me.
It's almost like you vividly remember this.
I do. It's seared in my mind. And I said, "Well, how about you? What was your takeaway?" And you know what? He got this flushed look in his face, this anger almost, and he popped out and he said, "You effing Christians are always pushing, pushing, pushing." I thought, whoa, wait a second. So step back for a second. I got a guy across the table. There's a conflict that's arisen. You're supposed to be in this pretty neat moment with everybody else. Yeah. There must be something else going on inside of him to have that type of reaction, because I've been through these conversations before, and typically they go great and everybody kumbaya and we hug and walk away. But wow, there was that tension right away. So I'm going to pause there for a minute. What was your impression as we got to that point?
My first thought was that exact thought. There's something going on here. Mm-hmm. And a leader or someone who really cares leans in, and it was really neat to see the table lean in. People didn't lean out and go, "Oh gosh, what do I do?"
Yeah, didn't get him to go to the bathroom or waiter check or anything like that, right?
Bueller, anyone.
Yeah, right.
It was, so my first impression was there's something going on here. And honestly, number one, I don't want to be an effing Christian who's like that, whatever that is. And so that was my first impression. And then you leaned in.
Yeah. We all leaned in to him. And so in that moment of decision, when you have a conflict that arises, I think you have a choice.
Yep.
And the choice is how you respond, how you react. Do you become defensive? Do you fight back with fight fire with fire? Or do you take a posture of understanding, seeking to understand what's under the hood a little bit? And that, thankfully, because of the training, recognizing the situation I was in, the environment, I had to lead with, be a good example, right? That's what I was asked to do. And I just sat back and I said, tell me more.
Yeah.
Right? And so he started expressing all of his background, his concerns, his thoughts. And it wasn't just this one moment. It was a lot of other things that led up to it, where he shot that out at us, right? At me for that. And so I was trying not to take offense to it. And even got to the point at the end of the conversation, I said, hey, well, let's be friends after this kind of thing. Now, I have to admit, I tried to reach out to him after. We didn't become friends. That's okay. That's not a fairy tale story, but it was a real situation and a dynamic where you wouldn't expect conflict on it. But what did you notice as we worked through all that with him as the night went on and as we ended the dinner?
Well, what could have been really awkward for the whole group actually seemed like it brought the group together. From the perspective of, this is real life. Yeah. What would have been fake would have been some aspect of, let's just pretend like that didn't happen. And, for me, I actually grew up maybe in a church very similar to what had hurt him, that's, you swept stuff under the rug. Yeah. Right. And so we didn't sweep it under the rug. Everyone was very still connected and wanting to include him, but really include everyone in the conversation. So authenticity continued. And now, of course, there was some discussion later.
There was still discussion.
What just happened there? But that's what happens in conflict. I mean, conflict is not expected every time. If we expected it every time, honestly, we'd probably steer away from a good amount of it. But it was handled well by the group, handled well by you. Yeah. And I, if you weren't a little bit offended, I would go, "Are you a robot?" Like Preston. I mean, that's a little offensive.
That's right. I was.
And so from the perspective, you handled it well as well.
And I actually was offended so much that I went and wrote the next day in my journal what happened and then how I processed all that. And then I was able to bring that forward to look, when I look back, I can bring it forward and say, okay, here's what I learned from it. Yeah. There's this, I want to talk real quick about conflict resolution. I'll ask you a few questions. There's an article that I read on how to master conflict resolution from the Harvard Business Review, right? So they have these really great thought leaders. They're fairly intelligent people. But I've always thought about this idea: what happens if you don't work to resolve the conflict? You avoid it, or you try to be nice. And I thought this. She quotes somebody else, but I want to read this so everybody hears this real quick, and I'd love to gain your thoughts on it. Efforts to be nice can have pretty significant costs. You create relationships that are neither authentic nor constructive. Your health and self-esteem may suffer, and you signal that you're a victim. And your organization loses out as you make compromises with the loudest person in the room, lose the diversity of thinking that's critical for innovation, or stop producing the best solutions. So being nice, stepping back, being passive, and not addressing the conflict. Tell me a little bit, have you ever seen a situation like that before?
Yeah, well, the first thing I would say is that, so if I were to pick up this cup right now, which I did, so if I were to pick up this cup and say, Preston, if I let go of this cup, what's going to happen? What would you say is going to happen?
You're going to drop it.
Right. It's going to fall.
Right.
So if you said, I feel like it's going to fall, I don't care.
No. Right.
And gravity doesn't care either. And so my first response to that is, if you don't believe that that's true, so it is true. Yeah. Like, that is true. So if someone hears this and go, I don't want that to be true, that would be like saying, I'm going to let go of this cup and I think it's going to go up. Like, here we go, Preston. I think this is going to go up. And in that moment, there's this really sad truth of, wow, you don't live in reality. Yeah. And so the first thing I hear from that is, this is reality. And if we want to be great leaders, we got to live in reality. If I want to be a great dad, a husband, golfer, I got to live in reality when it boils down to it. That's my first thought. Yeah. And so thinking about conflict in general, it's so good. We've got to have conflict.
Oh yeah, sure.
Right? My personal journey for that has been one where, honestly, I really used to like it. Then I did it in a really poor way. And we could talk more about that in some more examples. But
yeah. So that's thank you for responding. I've always thought this I always wanted to be known at work for being good, not nice. And there's a difference between the two, right? As you go on that.
Well, a nicety is great.
Yeah.
Cordiality, great. But if it's not helpful, it's not good. So that niceness is actually going to come back to bite me at some point in time. And saying someone's nice is a little bit like in the South where we say, bless your heart. Oh, bless your heart.
Yeah,
it's like,
exactly.
Whoa, wait, what's going on here? This is not good.
Yeah.
That has that same ring to it.
Yeah, and I've been in toxic environments as well where you were nice up front, but then you would have somebody walking around stabbing you in the back behind. And so just not a good environment. So it's best to try to resolve the conflict and figure out. So, hey, let's move and talk a little bit about your perspectives, specifically in the business that you're in. So here's a question for you. It says, you run a fast-paced, high expectation business. How do you view conflict in a team setting? Something to eliminate or something to embrace? And I think we've already alluded to that, but tell me about maybe an example of you being in that high-paced environment you're in. I'm sure you see conflict all the time. You work with teenagers, right, and others, and so I think that's part of it, and they're learning as well.
Absolutely.
So walk me through a little bit about your thoughts on that.
So I'll give you one of my favorite stories from my personal development. Right? This is probably 13, 14 years ago. So here's the situation. We were not as high volume as we are now. And so I'm bagging drive-through. So bagging, what does bagging mean, Preston? Great question. Essentially putting the chicken in the bag, the fries in the bag, making sure we get the napkins, the sauces, right? And you as a customer, you want it right and you want it fast.
Right.
So that's what I'm doing. And in this moment, we are waiting on food. And so from a personality perspective, I'm a DISC certified coach. So I use DISC because I think it simplifies everything. I'm inspiring and dominant, right? So I'm inspiring when I'm in a good place.
Yeah. Dominant when you're not.
Get dominant in that place where it's like, hey, we're waiting on, it's called a drive through, not a drive sit. Let's go, kids. Come on now. What are we doing, right? So I'm in that mode of I'm going into D mode.
Yeah, okay.
Woo! Neck starting to get a little red. How long on chicken? Okay, 2 minutes. How long? Okay. I'm getting to that place.
Right.
So Josh Loudermilk, been with me for 15 years now.
Yeah, great.
Josh is bagging front counter. Josh is a supportive and cautious personality style. He is the kind, measure twice, cut once individual. I buy 3 boards kind of guy, right? And so I'm over here like, steam coming out of my ears, and he literally doesn't even look at me, right? So if this is the screen, he goes like this. He goes, I don't know what's going on over here, but it's not helping.
That's awesome.
And I literally just went, oh my gosh, I am totally not handling this situation well.
Sure.
And Josh just handled this like an expert. I don't know what's going on over here, but it's not helping.
Yeah.
Now, what could have he done? He could have been like, oh my gosh, Chris is my boss. I can't tell him that. He could have been like, dude, what the heck is your problem?
Yeah, right.
He could have escalated.
Yeah.
But instead, he just literally I don't know. Just literally like, I don't know what's going on over here, but it's not helping. So, great story for me. I tell this story probably now once a month, maybe sometimes twice a month. When I look at individuals and go, hey, that makes sense that you're dealing with that. Wonder what's going on for that other person. Hey, that makes sense. Are you aware of what the personality style of that other person is? So we can talk more about that. But there's so many stories in our restaurant is that it's a pressure cooker. No pun intended. The chicken is pressure cooked. But it's a pressure cooker.
Yeah, sure.
And so there's going to be so many opportunities for conflict. There's a lot of opportunities of conflict with customers. There's a name for that woman, complicated customer, right? It's earned a nickname over a lifetime. You ever, the Karen?
Yes.
The Karen, I always feel bad for someone who's
I
actually
do too.
named
Don't
Karen.
you?
I'm like, oh. But man, that happens. So what do you do in these situations? So our restaurant, our environment is conflict.
Yeah.
And we've got to handle it well, teach people how to handle it well, because you don't naturally learn how to handle conflict.
Right.
So
right. And so the counterpart to Karen would be Ken, maybe, right? So there are both Karens and Kens that you have to deal with. To be fair on that, certainly. So
cranny face emoji.
Hey, let's go down this path real quick about so in conflict resolution. It would seem to me if you could understand where somebody's coming from, their makeup, their DNA, what DISC teaches you. I came up at Coke and we talked a lot about Herman brain dominance.
Yeah.
It's very similar to that. And all these personality tests, whether it's Myers-Briggs or whatnot, it'll help you understand somebody else. And I tell people all the time, Chris, it's great to understand yourself. That's a starting point. But the best and most productive part that I've ever learned is if you can understand other people. Like when I was in sales, if I can understand somebody who was sitting across the desk from me over time and not trying to put them in boxes, but to understand how they thought, how they communicated, what their preferences were, it made a huge difference. But how's something like the DISC profile help in conflict resolution?
I love it. First thing I do when I'm teaching this is I ask this question. Have you ever said, what in the world was he thinking?
All the time.
And everybody raises their hand. Has anybody said, what in the world was she thinking?
Yeah.
People raise their hand. And then this question of, what in the world was I thinking? I go, what in the world was I thinking when I stayed up till midnight watching diners, drive-ins, and dives? Which, for the record, I could just watch that for like 8 hours in a row. I'm just constantly going, oh my gosh, I need to drive to Rhode Island right now to go get a sandwich. Right. What was I thinking? I wasn't.
Often.
But why was I doing that? So there is a predictive pattern of behavior of individuals. And that's what a personality profile helps you with, is understanding your predictive pattern. So if I understand my predictive pattern and I understand your predictive pattern, once again, I don't put you in a box, but I go, oh, that makes sense. You're stressed in this situation. What happened? Oh, we didn't have all the details for you. And as a C personality, you really like the details. Now I'm not looking at you going, what is your problem? I go, and that makes sense. So instead of being in a place of, I don't know, I don't understand, I've moved to understanding. But then I can actually move to where I appreciate and celebrate. So now I can say, dude, we need people like you in our organization. Hey, we need more of that, not just more of me. When I was 22 as an operator, I hired only I personalities. I just want inspiring people. I mean, like these, like shake hands, kiss
like me,
babies.
right?
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
Just like me.
Let's go. Who likes to count drawers? Who likes to order inventory? Who likes to make sure that everything is done correct on the payroll? I'm like, not me. And I quickly learned that Miss Lee, who was a blessing, right? She loved counting drawers. Oh my gosh. Praise the Lord. You like doing that? I'm like, I'd rather poke my eyes out.
That's right. Come on.
So as you learn about someone's personality, it's literally going, oh, you speak German and I speak French. Sprechen Sie Deutsch? Parlez-vous français? Oh, to your point, I know my language, but now I know yours, and everything I do, this is what my mentor, Dr. Rome, taught me. Everything I do comes through my filter to you. Right. And now I understand. I've just got to do a little bit more to understand you. Saying the phrase, I'm curious to yourself.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, I'm curious. I'm curious what's going on for that person. And by understanding their personality profile, you can go, hey, I'm not just curious. I actually have a pretty good understanding, but now I can wade into that with that curiosity. And so I move from judgmental to curious. And when we do that, wow, you're really here for me. It's not about you. Because to that point, if I'm just understand myself, it's very easy to make an excuse.
Right.
Well, that's who I am. Just deal with it.
Yeah.
Right. Personality should never be an excuse for poor performance.
Good.
If I'm using my personality as an excuse for poor performance, there needs to be a timeout. In our organization, that'll be a moment like, hey, I hear you. That makes sense. But this is a moment when we need the details, Darley.
Right. Yeah.
We need the details.
Yeah.
And I'm like, y'all figure out the details. I'm a big picture vision guy. Well, guess what? We got to make sure that 8 nuggets get in the box, and then the box gets in the bag, and the right size fry gets in there, and then the napkins and that delicious Chick-fil-A sauce. Right? It's all got to get in there, right? So I can't say, I'm a big picture guy. I don't worry about bagging. Right. So it has been so helpful. I mean, I literally went back to school, got certified to be able to say, hey, we're going to use this. We train every single one of our team members in understanding their personality profile.
That's great. And that's a transferable skill too, isn't it? Because when they leave your organization, right, someday they'll be able to go whatever they do. If they don't go to school and they go to a skill and execute and do that, or they go to college or whatnot, they'll have that understanding of somebody about, I love this thought of seeking first to understand, then to be understood. That's the old Stephen Covey piece out there. But it's a evergreen truth is what I call them, right? It's always true, natural law. And it's the other idea too, is that respect and dignity for the individual. That's this imago Dei, this made in the image of God. If we have respect and dignity for the other person that's sitting across, even though they say, effing whatever to you, and something inflammatory, if you can exercise self-control and see things from their point of view, it has to happen in a flash of a moment, right?
Yep.
But that's where you can make the decision, say, okay, let's talk about this and take it to resolution. So important. But why do you think most leaders struggle with these tough conversations? And then how do you coach your managers to handle conflict? Because it seems like to me there's more often than not in the workplace, less people handle conflict. They avoid it, right? They just don't want to talk about it. Why do leaders shy away?
I think they believe a lie. I think they believe that there's only one type of conflict, that they think it's all unhealthy. Mm-hmm. And the reality is healthy conflict exists, and when we have it, it actually grows us closer to who we want to be as an individual and an organization. Mm-hmm. So Lencioni's model for the 5 behaviors, which is first you've got to have trust, then healthy conflict, then commitment, accountability, results. What does every leader want? What does every business want? They want results. And they want to skip the first 4 steps. So it's this moment of going, you have to realize it's not possible. Once again, it's like gravity. I didn't make it up. I wish I would have made it up, by the way. That'd be really cool.
Yeah.
I would own a Caribbean. I wouldn't even be sitting here right now. I wrote 1 billion copies of a book because like you come up with some principle.
Right.
But no, this principle is here. All relationships are based on trust. So my favorite question to ask as I'm teaching people this is, how did the conversation go with that person? I didn't talk to them. So why? I don't think they're going to listen to me. Okay, that makes sense. Where is the lack of trust? I haven't thought about that. And that makes sense. Great. So let's spend some time figuring out why there isn't trust. Because if there's no trust, there's going to be no healthy conflict. The only conflict that's going to come out of that is unhealthy conflict. And then there's no way to go to the next level. I think the most abused word in business is the word accountability. People say, oh, I want to hold you accountable. Great. How's your trust for that person? I don't have trust. So why are you trying to hold them accountable? Well, because they need to do their job. Well, of course they need to do their job, but you're skipping 4 steps. You can't do that. There's no way to skip trust, healthy conflict, and commitment. We got to be on the same page. Well, how do we get on the same page? We got to talk about it. How do we talk about it? It's often a spirited debate. And a spirited debate sounds like, hey, Preston, that's a great idea, but what about this part of it? Oh, that's a good point. Thank you for bringing that up. What if we did this? And then you have this back and forth, which makes us better as an organization. So, I mean, I think the biggest issue is the leader, whoever the leader is, has to set the tone for the organization, that there is such a thing as healthy conflict. There has to be. And so there's some that are the spirited debater. There's the other that's the, I'm going to shy away and not bring it up. Neither one of those are where we go over here where we're getting frustrated or we're not saying anything. It's where we got to move closer to one another. And I think that's, once again, where personalities help, because that makes sense. This is the dominant and the cautious, the task-oriented. This is the inspiring and supportive. And we got to say, whoa, we need to bring together so that we can really look each other in the eye and go, that makes sense. Tell me more. If that makes sense, I have a question. Or, ooh, what if? And then we brainstorm that together. So I think that's the first thing. And then the second thing is this reality is that a lot of us believe a lie.
Tell me more.
So I learned this idea of an analogy of the gas pedal and brake pedal as the leader. And I know you, and you know me. I'm not looking at you going, Preston, you need to push on the gas. You need to try harder. You need to set bigger goals. You know, you need to write a few more books. I'm like, goodness gracious, you're writing books and you're doing podcasts and you're doing leadership talks. I'm like, it's not the gas that you need to push on. Same thing for me. Hey, Chris, you need to go do more in the restaurant. You need to do more with that nonprofit and create more. No. But what lie do I believe? And if I've got my foot on the gas and my foot on the brake, I'm not going anywhere. I don't need to spend any more time pushing harder. And so with healthy conflict, there's a lot of times where the individual, it's not that you need to work on what do I need to say. It's more of what do I believe? What lie do I believe? For me, I'm never good enough. I'm never going to measure up. And it doesn't take much for you to say something to me, for me to go very quickly to that place of believing a huge lie about myself. You see that deep breath? And next thing I know, I'm like, oh, man, I'm here. So to go, wait a minute, whoa. I'm believing a lie right now, which is I'm not good enough to speak into this. So what can I do? I can be transparent and I go, hey, in this moment right now, I'm actually believing a little bit that I suck. I'm believing that I am not good enough to be the operator of this business. I'm believing that no matter what I do, this is all going to go to crap. And then someone looks at who I'm talking to goes, are you serious? I'm actually intimidated by you because I feel like you know so much more than me. And I'm like, are you serious? So the second thing is going, whoa. Where's my brake pedal? Do I understand what my brake pedal? Do I understand I got my foot pushed down on the brake? Because if I don't, it doesn't matter how much I push on the gas.
Right.
Hey, you need to go learn this model about 5 behaviors. Cute. Add it to the repertoire. Right. Go learn all the Covey.
Sure.
Great. That's awesome.
Right.
I believe that I'm never going to measure up is always going to win, no matter what. So personally, what we do in our organization, and as I've learned over the last really decade, is we've got to coach that individually so that they show up really well to be able to have trust, healthy conflict. So to be able to leverage the model, you got to have someone who is interested in growing and learning to be able to show up in that conflict.
Yeah. That's so good. And then I also think about teams, because we talked a lot about the individual relationship. One of the things, and I just opened with that story about being in Moscow, right? And the Partnering for Growth workshop. And one of the reasons to pull two teams together, which are different companies, have different P&Ls, they have different expectations, different demands, different accountabilities, if you will. And the idea is if they're having that conflict, how do you bring them together? We always started with a survey on both sides.
Okay.
And they would answer the exact same questions so you would understand both perspectives. That's so important, right? Is understanding and standing in somebody else's shoes. And then we would take those two, and then as a facilitator, I'd walk into the room, and I'd share with them the results of the survey. And that would start conversation. And you could tell where the leaders started leaning in and saying, okay, why do you think that way? Why do you feel that way? Tell us what's behind that.
Yeah.
What would a good result look like for you? How can we win? And so I saw people step up in those conversations. Then you move into things, once you get past that, you start talking about shared values, shared vision. You could talk about a joint definition of winning, how we celebrate each other, our plans for the future, how we do business together. So this trust idea, the vulnerability, the willingness to listen and stand in somebody else's shoes, take that perspective, understand them better, all steps and all parts of conflict resolution. I know with the Coca-Cola company, I don't know if most of the listeners know much about Coke, but the Coke system itself has the company, which creates the concentrate, and then our bottling partners, they fill the cans and the bottles, they put them on the shelves and do a wonderful job. But there's always what we call the constructive tension between the two. And that's healthy, to your point. And if you can get where you are with the trust and you have that healthy tension, you can have those hard conversations around a table, right?
Yep.
And you can make a difference. Instead of avoiding things, you can address issues. Instead of talking at each other, you can talk with each other on that. So important.
Well, to that point, so often leaders want to get rid of a problem that doesn't need to be gotten rid of.
Right.
So the concept of managing tensions versus solving problems. So Andy Stanley has said this for years. It's like there's tensions to manage and there's problems to solve.
That's right.
So I always ask my team this: a line in the drive-thru, is that a tension to manage or a problem to solve? And they look at me like, oh my gosh, what's the right answer? I'm like, exactly. Right? Because there's always going to be a little conflict here between staffing and how many people we have and where do we place them and what do we do? Because if we get rid of the line, we have no customers.
Yep.
But if we have too long of a line, people are going to say, I'm going to go somewhere else. And so I didn't say a long line. I didn't say a line that's wrapped onto the road. I said, do we want to have a line? And they're like, oh, yes. Perfect. Well, we need to manage that tension. And how do we manage that tension? Well, we manage it with systems that create behaviors. Well, what are the systems that are going to consistently get that behavior? Problem to solve. It is backed onto the road, and now people are literally not able to drive. It's like, we need to solve this problem right now. Let's solve that problem. Get back to a healthy tension, because with no tension, there's no growth. And there's no better conversation to have when it comes to conflict. Go, whoa. Is this a tension to manage or is this a problem to solve? And if we can start having that mindset in our organization, you can then look and go, okay, I see that this is a problem to solve.
But here's a key point we need to make is that your perspective and your mindset, when you see those, you see them as developing or teaching moments,
They're opportunities.
Don't you? Right? Yeah. Instead of I've got the problem, tension. I get all that. But what you're teaching are critical thinking skills and the way to think through those different things from a different perspective. And again, they carry that forward.
Absolutely.
And accelerates their development as they go into their careers and things like that. So hats off to you. I think that's all good. Hey, let's move to I want to touch briefly on Chick-fil-A, because I know your 30-plus year involvement with them. Really strong corporate culture.
Yes.
Right? Very strong, known for that. But how does a great culture help prevent or resolve conflicts before they escalate?
So I love this definition of culture. Culture is simply the sum of all behaviors. It's not the sum of all intentions. Wait a minute, it's not the sum of my intentions? No. If I go, what were my intentions? My intentions were to eat healthy. My intentions were to weigh 165 pounds. My reality is, okay, so what do I do? So one of the things I love about Chick-fil-A, so think about this. So Truett Cathy, 1946, opened the Dwarf House. 1967, opens first Chick-fil-A. 1986, first freestanding restaurant. Long story short here is in the 80s, the Cathy family started talking about secession. How do we continue this on?
Right. Yep.
So now we're in the third generation. So Andrew and I are the same age. We're 46. And Andrew is the CEO of the business. They've been thinking about that for 40 years.
Thought ahead, right. Had the foresight, the vision. Incredible. Yep.
Literally, when people go, why is Chick-fil-A so amazing? Well, one of the reasons is that they take that purpose, values, and vision and actually turn it into a strategy. And then we have all kinds of systems to make it happen. So the simple, really, really, really simple answer is that when you have a purpose, a deep why, and then you go, wait, how are we going to do that consistently? Okay, we need to have we've skipped a vision. What's our vision? Now we need to have a plan. Okay, so now we know why, who, where, how. Chick-fil-A just does that. And they do that because they say, hey, we are going to make sure we think long, not short. It takes a lot to turn the Titanic, and that's the same thing as a big organization now. Right. Chick-fil-A really thinks ahead on that. The Cathy family thinks ahead on that. And then it's not driven by the bottom line. The bottom line comes. And so purpose is greater than profit. Truett would always say that if you put purpose first, people first, profits will come. It's going to happen. Yeah. And if it doesn't, that means we're running the business poorly. Well, we can back up and figure that out. But if we lose our purpose, if we lose the caring about the people part, then it's all going to fall apart. So that is our culture. Some cultures, you cut and you go, ooh, I like the facade. With the Cathys and with Chick-fil-A, from my experience, is you go, wow. Andrew is super kind and super intelligent and generous and humble and crazy intelligent. Okay. I see how that works. I see why it's working now.
But in the midst of all that, there's got to be conflict, right? We're all people, and Chick-fil-A's got a very high standard, but I mean, we're still people, right? So real quick, is there a way that you feel like the culture helps with conflict resolution? How does it, it's the behaviors, right? What does it teach? What environment does it create inside that culture to ensure that it's okay to have conflict, but those conflicts are resolved?
So we think about culture, really, when my team, I'm going, hey, why are you here? Okay. Why am I here? That's the same answer. And so ultimately culture happens because people are there for the same purpose.
There you go.
So at Chick-fil-A Eastlake, our purpose is to faithfully serve our team and our community. If you go ask anybody on my team, that's their answer.
Right.
And as a matter of fact, go quiz them, by the way, next time you come through the drive-thru, Preston. Hey, I'm curious, what's the purpose?
I'm going to go get my Chick-fil-A sandwich right after this.
There you go. And ask. And, whoever's there, if it's right now, I'm like, it's Preston, it's Alyssa, it's Jordan, it's Julian. I'm thinking about who's there right now, and they're going to say that's the reason why. Yeah. Personalities are different, but purpose is the same. And if you want to have a great organization, if I want to have a great organization, I want a great marriage, I want to be a great parent, I've got to have the same purpose with that individual. Because when you shuck it all down, we're here for the same reason. So just a quick story about the Chick-fil-A corporate purpose. This is really powerful. 1980, the executive committee of Chick-fil-A went off on a retreat to figure out what do we do to deal with what's going on. And what was going on in America? Crazy inflation, oil. There were gas lines. People were literally waiting hours and hours for gas, inflation, mortgages. It was just a crazy time. Right. So they went off to answer this question: what do we do? And Dan Cathy said, I think we need to talk about why are we here?
Wow. What a mind shift question.
And when you think about it, you go, whoa. So, Chris, are you saying there wasn't a purpose at Chick-fil-A from 1946 with Truett till 1980? No, there was. But it was really embodied in one man. It was embodied in Truett. So then as Chick-fil-A starts to grow, we realize, wait a minute, this is not sustainable. You know what is sustainable? If we can take that why and we can encapsulate it into a clear purpose statement, where then when we bring them on, we're going to go, wait, why do you want to work at Chick-fil-A? I want to make a lot of money. Cool. Next. Everybody wants to make money in a job. That's kind of a requirement of a job, unless it's, a volunteer position. So that story just encapsulates when I think about the culture of Chick-fil-A and the family and how do we do this. You create sustainable growth when you have purpose first. Then you figure out the other stuff.
Right.
You can't go the other way. You can't go from what down to why. You always burn out.
Right.
That's a whole nother subject.
Yeah, it's got to flow from the why out and go from there. So powerful. And I know what it's like to be in a culture where there is no purpose. I can remember numerous times having conversations at the Coca-Cola company with people that didn't know why they were there or what the purpose of the organization was. Now, they finally defined that. The purpose statement was, or is now, I think it's still on the wall, that says to refresh the world and make a difference.
Yeah.
So it's pretty simple how you can figure that out and how you fit into that. And it's also amazing to me, Chris, is how many people I talked to. I was in a group called Franchise Leadership. And there was always this lack of clarity about the purpose of the organization, the role of the organization. And even the people that worked in the organization weren't clear on what they did. Yeah. And so you have the leadership up here that had a mist about their thoughts on it and a fog down here.
Howard Hendricks,
exactly,
one of my favorite
right?
quotes. Yeah.
And so that's a real challenge. So the purpose piece makes a big difference in culture. And I would tell you that it is the absolute game changer for organizations. And then leading to conflict resolution, how you behave and treat one another.
But it's really hard. And that's when people ask the question, they want an easy answer.
Yep.
They would like it. Just, can you tell me a button I can push? Can you tell me something that I can just do right now? It's like, no, it's going to take a lot of work. It's hard.
Hey, we're going to wrap up real quick. I had some other questions for you, but almost out of time here. And if you're still listening, I think this might be fun.
Cheers.
But tell me, you've got a fantastic sense of humor. How do you use a sense of humor to help resolve conflict, de-escalate situations? What do you do? How do you use that?
Honestly, I look at the other person and I'm just going, I want to have a relationship with you, right? And what's more important in this situation than getting it right is having a relationship. Because you really have to choose in conflict.
Right.
Am I going to be right or am I going to be in a relationship? And there's points in time when we need to just be able to laugh at ourselves, I'll tell a story about conflict of when I made fun of a customer and I was so embarrassed by it. And I'll tell that story and laugh at myself in that moment to bring some brevity to the fact that, hey, you're in trouble right now because of poor performance, right?
Right.
But hey, I'm with you, right? I've done stupid things too. And then I love how we can actually have a little bit of humor around me being old, like dad jokes,
Yeah, sure.
just to be able to bring a good dad joke into, a stressful situation. For the record, I don't know why they're called dad jokes.
I don't know.
They're funny.
That's a great thing to look up.
Yeah.
ChatGPT.
ChatGPT that.
Yeah,
But
right.
so having fun, Truett would always say, if we're not having fun, we're not doing it right.
Yeah, that's right.
So how are we having fun? Is it miserable to work here? And so it shouldn't be miserable to work anywhere. So I think that humor is part of that connection. Yeah. When I look at, I want to connect with you. And now I've gotten it wrong, just like sometimes you get it wrong if you're too serious. Right. So I do think that if you view it as, oh my gosh, I can't do this right, so I got time out. That's actually part of the reality, is creating a culture where you can be a real human.
Yeah, sure.
Where
embracing that.
It's relationship, not about right.
It is, so. Yeah. I'll never forget somebody coming into a meeting, a new VP that was appointed, and Coke was known for having very nice trips, business trips and things like that. Right. And we had a good time together. And he came in and said, we're not here to have fun. So he put a stake in the ground. That took the air out of the tires totally on it. And I know that we're not there to entertain people, but we should still hopefully interact with a sense of humor, a sense of playfulness. Yeah. And I think as a leader, if you can take yourself less seriously, that will help you in terms of connecting with other people, building those relationships where you have the trust and you can do incredible things.
Because the result, it's not my result.
Yeah.
It's our result.
That's right.
And so I need to take myself less seriously and take the team more seriously. Yeah. From that perspective.
That's so good. Chris, you've been a great guest today. I appreciate your insights. It's been awesome to learn about your background, about your thoughts. I love the thought leadership, right? And DISC and the way you think about that. You don't shy away from the conflict, but you're actually teaching people through all about how to handle it. And those life transferring skills is a big deal. So hopefully our listeners, I know if they're listening today, will gain a lot and take a lot out of it.
Hope so too.
And you can follow Chris on LinkedIn and check him out on that. And just a quick 3 takeaways, I think, for the group I want to mention before we close out. Conflict isn't the enemy. bad conflict management is. Number 2, strong leadership culture prevents most issues before they escalate. And then lastly, sometimes the right approach and maybe the right joke can change everything, right? Hey, it's good stuff. Thanks, Chris. And hey, thanks for being on listening to P Cube today. And if you want to follow us on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram, please do that. Hey, and if you like this episode, make sure you share it, like it, or comment on it. That'd be greatly appreciated. I'm Preston Poore. This is P Cube. Take care and talk soon.